now my pleasure to introduce our first presentation for CONVEY'24. What will a grain handling facility look like over the next 10 years? Our keynote speaker is Jeff Van Pevenage, who will discuss what is considered in automating a grain handling facility, including the assessment of existing infrastructure, customers, labor, location, equipment, and operational processes. Jeff is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Columbia Grain in Portland, Oregon. He joined the company in 1990 in Colfax, Washington, while finishing his senior year at Washington State University. Over his 30-plus years with Columbia Grain, he has worked in or managed facilities in Great Falls, Montana, Pullman, Washington, Moscow, Idaho, and Central Ferry, Washington. In 2013, Jeff was promoted to Senior Vice President of Columbia Grain, followed by becoming President and Chief Executive Officer in 2016. His background includes working with durum, oats, barley, seed, pulse, and spring wheat. Jeff has also served on the NGFA Executive Committee and Board of Directors. So with that, let's welcome Jeff for our keynote presentation.
Good morning. Welcome to Convey 2024. It's kind of an exciting time for me to be here. It's the first Convey conference that I've attended ever. As usually just our ops people have come, so it's exciting to be here. And it's an honor to be able to give a short talk on automation. I'd like to thank Jess for the invitation to be here, and Jeeps and NGFA, so thank you very much for that. You've put a lot of trust in me to be able to deliver a talk to you people about where we've come from and what we're trying to do. So I want to thank you for that. He already used about half my speech with the introduction that I was going to give of myself, but I'm still going to do it because I think it's relevant to where we're trying to go from. But anyway, I'm Jeff Van Pevenage. I'm President and CEO of what I believe to be a very forward-thinking, innovative, and diverse grain specialty crop food company. And we're in the PNW in the northern tier of the United States, and we're known as Columbia Grain International. And over my career, which started by dumping trucks when I was in high school for Odessa Union Warehouse Company in Davenport, Washington, I then went on in my senior year in high school to start originating grain for a Snake River barge loading facility. Moved on from there out to Montana, where I managed a grain elevator and traded durum, oats, a lot of other specialty crops. Was asked to move back to Pullman, Washington to run a pea splitting seed plant in Pullman and the old Snake River facility where I started my career. And in 2005, was able to move back to Montana to start trading domestic spring wheat for us. And then the pea, lentil, chickpea business ended up laying in my lap. So went on to do that. And over time, built out about, with the help of who is now Vice President of Operations for Columbia Grain, Scott McIntosh, we built out over 8 pea and lentil processing facilities across our footprint. I spent the last 16 years as either general manager of Montana or president and CEO of the company. And through all that, what I didn't say was anything about operations, because I didn't spend any time in operations. But what I do know as president and CEO is I like to listen to my operations people and let them help me put forth what we're going to do going forward, because that's my job as president and CEO, is to set the strategy for the company, listen to my people, and let them execute what needs to be done. So every year on January 1, I put forth a list of my top 5 priorities that I would like our people to do, and I give that to our vice presidents, our CFOs, and as well, I give it to our stockholders, Marubeni Corporation, a Japanese company that owns us. And one of the reasons I say that is because it's important that they understand where we're going, and what we've got out of that was a lot of collaboration by their employees who also want to help us, and they have a great deal of knowledge and connections to a lot of technology, so that's been very helpful for us as we've gone forward. Anyway, in January of 21, the very first thing I put on my list of what we needed to do was automation. We needed to start embracing technology and find ways to make our life easier and reduce the number of people that we needed to hire. I'm not saying that we needed to reduce the number of people, we needed to reduce the number of people we needed to hire. And that's the way I looked at it. So, looking back through the passage of time, and that's not a Kamala Harris joke, we kind of have to look at where we've come from in the industry. And so if you think back to 100 years ago, when guys were bagging wheat and stacking it to make it look like a building, do you think they ever thought about loading shuttle trains of corn in 6 hours? Probably not. I don't think they were even thinking about the building that actually replaced the bags of wheat that looked like a building. But that's the way it looks today. Or how many of you guys have Coopered cars? I can say that I've Coopered a car in high school. That's how we loaded grain at one of the facilities we had. And I also stood behind single axle trucks dumping, and there was 3 of us when we did it in high school, because that was customer service. Get those corners cleaned out, get the truck out, have all those people around. That was a luxury back then. I also remember moving cars with a tractor as my track mobile, and I remember one night going right over the main line because we couldn't get the brakes on the car to set, so we just kept going because the car was going to pull the tractor backwards if we didn't do it. And the cars ended up on the main line, so that was a fun night. And I remember pulling cars with a turnstile and a rope too. And when your colleague doesn't put down or doesn't pull up the gate in between the cars don't move and that rope will snap, and you might look down to see if you have legs left or not, because I've done that as well. So the need for automation and technology is very, very important. As we started thinking about automation, we didn't really think about it from the grain elevator standpoint, but what my employees read when I said we need automation, we immediately started with things like DocuSign. That was great. We can send out our contracts via DocuSign. Helps the accounting system. We get the contracts back. It helps when the CCC comes and we know where our contracts are at. So that was a good first step in automation. And we started updating our ERPs to produce documents automatically. We do in the pea and lentil business, you do a lot of, you sell everything by containers. So think about selling 10 million bushels by truckload. Every truckload, and doing the documentation and paperwork and invoicing on that. So we spent a lot of time doing those kind of things. But again, it was about accounting time savings. We did a lot of spreadsheet automation work. We incorporated Frontier first and then Bushel, which that was good for helping out origination, helping out trading, those kind of things. It was clear to me that our people were listening. They were looking for ways to automate and do things. So it didn't come to me about grain elevators at first, because really where we had a lot of people were in our pea and lentil plants. We had 8 of them to operate. And these facilities are rather high-tech. They start with air screen cleaning machines. They move on to gravity decks. They'll go through destoners. They'll go through indent cleaners. They go through what we call our magic magnetic dirt sorters and end with laser color sorting equipment. And they're all primarily put in places where we have plenty of product and we just don't have a lot of people, unfortunately. So we have product and we have customers, but we don't have the people to operate 24/7. And we really couldn't find enough people, so we thought about how do we make our plants more automated. And we started with this facility 3 years ago. It actually was built 5 years ago, but 3 years ago we started thinking more about automation to it. And this is in Plentywood, Montana, where it has all the equipment. The lower one is in Ross, Montana. But we immediately put into this one, it's called a Consetti auto bagger. So what used to be 3 people to sack, bag, sew, tag, and do that, we brought in the auto bagging system to do it. What we needed to get to was to run 24/7. And even having that, we still didn't have enough people. You know, with the auto bagger, we can bag everything that we could process in 24 hours in 8 hours in a day. So that's a big savings. We didn't need the people at night to continually keep the bagging off the product because we had enough finished product space to last us through the night. And as I was going through and visiting customers that we had in Europe, I saw a lot of them that had equipment that after they go through their bagging line, you would watch these pallets just roll through, up into racks, go where they needed to go by themselves, and then their people would order up their truckload, and those pallets would come back exactly as they told them, all automated, and line up right for the truck. It was all through barcode systems, and so that really made me start thinking about how are we going to start incorporating these things into our facilities. So, you know, I wouldn't say we're 100% successful yet, but of 3 years of working at it and keeping in mind that these are all facilities that were built already, of the 8 facilities that we have, it takes time and it takes money to start incorporating the changes that you need to put in to automate them fully. And, you know, I know that the technology has already been out there for moving these products in pallets and all that via barcode, but that's Amazon. And I think everybody in this room understands the margins that are involved in our business today. I probably too much look at it as we're a sand and gravel business, and the margins aren't there to incorporate a lot of this high technology. But the more and more you look at it, and you look at the fact that in a lot of these places, we just can't get the people to do it, so we may have to start spending the money and depreciating it out over the course of over time. As it stands today, through the work and collaboration of different vendors and our operations team, looking at things like, you know, SCADA systems for the processing plants, some of the radars and the PLCs, and you know, PLCs are been around forever, and they're in a lot of the facilities already. They're already in our pulse facilities, but you need to look at more high-tech SCADA type of PLC systems that allow more tracking and more connectivity to some of the post systems that you're going to need beyond the processing in that. So those are some of the things that we've had to look at. And I will just say it takes a lot of heavy collaboration and different vendors and a lot of diversified brain power to get yourself to do that. We believe in 2 to 3 months we'll be able to run at least 2 of our facilities in a lights out scenario. And that's our first goal here with our pulse plants, is to be able to run them for about 4 hours at night with no people in the facilities. Have them set up so that the computers and the PLCs will manage the equipment, manage the flow, and give somebody a call if there's a problem. But that's the kind of thing that we've needed to do. We'll be using cameras, speed sensors, motion sensors, wave radar to track inventory. And that's just part of the processing part of it. Once you get beyond that, you have to think about the key data elements and the critical tracking of those systems so that you're prepared to be able to load that product properly into the rail cars to the right customers using barcodes, RFID readers, and those kind of products. And probably the last step we'll look at in these plants, we'll be looking at the possibility of robots or self-driven forklifts to move product around the plant and into the rail cars that we need. As I said, you've got a lot of these plants were built, some of these plants were built 2008, so they're older, need a lot of things incorporated into them, but the fun part is we're just breaking ground on a new dry bean facility in Valley City, North Dakota. So thinking about what we've been working on for the last couple of years is allowing us to incorporate automation into the design of that facility as we're going through. We started thinking about, automation, as I said, back in 21, and we thought about it grain and pulse. And the reason we went pulse is because I figured we would get the most bang for our buck there and we could get the quickest results out of that. But as the more we looked at it, we just knew we needed to look at a different way of thinking about our system. So we're a company of 450 employees, and certainly over the 2021 timeframe, post-COVID in that, we consistently had over 50 job openings available across our footprint. So that told me we needed more than just our pulse plants. We were only running these pulse plants 8 to 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. And we can run them 24/7. We have the product and the customers to do it, just not the people. Even in our shuttle loaders, we were constantly trading labor, chasing labor, swapping labor, and we still couldn't always get trains loaded in time. And not only that, we were wearing our people out. So as a company, and these are some of the important things you have to think about when you're thinking about the design into these facilities. So we handle 20 different commodities at least throughout our footprint. Some of these shuttle loaders will handle 5 to 6 different commodities: spring wheat, durum, yellow pea shuttles, lentil cars, chickpeas, canola. There's a lot of opportunities for problems. There's a lot of opportunities for blending, mixing, and then you have to think about space efficiency as well. So that started to ring in our mind as the thoughts about AI were coming out. How can we utilize AI to help us solve all those problems? So here's a little bit of a picture of Columbia Grain. So we operate 14 shuttle loaders, 2 barge loaders. We will have 9 processing facilities for peas, lentils, dry beans, and about 20 or so truck elevators. And our concentration is in the processing plants and the shuttle loaders. And you can kind of see the number of employees we have, and this is something I think we've got some North Dakota guys here. I got to ask them, how come it takes us 14 guys in North Dakota and 5 in Montana? The other thing is that the pulse plants, all of our shuttle loaders reside in Montana and North Dakota, and the pulse plants reside in Montana, North Dakota, one in Clarkston, Washington, and one in Hastings, Nebraska. Throughout these facilities, we have straight track, we have circle track, we handle winter wheat, spring wheat, peas, durum, corn, soybeans through these shuttle loaders. Thinking about protein spreads, particularly in kind of western North Dakota going west, you really have to think about protein wheat and the opportunities that exist for the P&W. P&W wheat can be very challenging with different protein spreads and how to get the most economic return out of that. And so we needed to think about how to provide solutions for these facilities to make them work. And did I mention that Montana and North Dakota are 2 of the most rural states in existence today when it comes to finding people? So we had a lot of things and challenges, and how do we look at facilities? Like, we're sitting in Chester, Montana, that's got a population of 850 people. There's 2 shuttle loaders, 3 post-processing facilities. 50% of the people that exist in Chester, Montana, which is really the entire county of Liberty County, 50% of them aren't in the workforce. You got a county seat, you got a hospital, a school. It's really difficult to find the employees you need. And what we're doing there is using H-2A employees where we can. Sweetgrass, Montana is even better. There's 65 people that live there, and it's border control and Columbia Grain, a grocery store, and a gas station. You can see from the picture there's a lot of houses there, but that's all in Coots, Alberta, on the other side of the border, and they don't get to come across and work for us. We're in Harlan, Montana, which is the capital of the Fort Belknap Indian Reservation. Again, over 50% that don't qualify to work, and we need 5 to 6 employees there. And not to mention, it's 45 miles from Havre and an hour and a half to Glasgow, where the population centers are. And even in New Rockford, North Dakota, where there are 1,300 people, but we were just looking for labor workers, and we had 12 months that we couldn't even get an application submitted there for us. And they need 14 employees there. So we were up against a lot of challenges. And labor, which I'm sure is the #1 challenge across the entire industry, it certainly is in our footprint. Not only that, we were looking at knowledge succession, given the fact that I think the age of farmers in the United States is 58, but I can tell you for a fact that I know of at least 3 managers in North Dakota, not working for us, but they were 70 years old, still working for their companies because their companies couldn't find replacement managers, so they just kept going just to keep the company going. So we know there's knowledge succession and age issues that are going to hit us as a company. And operational mistakes that happen, just human error, and particularly when you're running 5 or 6 different commodities and trying to run 5 or 6 different commodities through a facility. And most important is safety for these facilities. It probably should be #1 on my list. It's definitely got to be on the list. But the longer hours that we have to work people because we don't have enough of them takes a giant toll on our people. So, where we were at pre-automation, farmers come through the door. We know who they are, right? We see them. We can tell when they call on our phone systems. We can tell who they are, what they're in that. It's easy to do. When trucks come to our facility or facilities, we probe them, and we probe them in a lot of different ways. In some facilities, we'll probe with, the auto probers. It's got a person that has to run that prober, takes that person almost a full-time job. Some facilities we have stands that people can walk up and probe them by hand. Some facilities I've watched guys standing on the edge of the truck on top, probing them down. Probably not the best way to do it. Doesn't happen anymore. But point being is you've got to have a person there to do that. And grading takes 2 to 3 people at a lot of our facilities on busy days when we're trying to dump 200 to 300 trucks a day, and you've got our own grade labs there, and you need 2 to 3 people doing that. You've got to keep track of your inventory, have people to go up and down steps. This is all stuff that you guys know quite well. And when we're loading out, it takes human capability to operate the loading systems. Also, it takes human capability to think about the blending that has to happen, and particularly when you're blending protein wheats and making sure that you've got everything right there. And, sometimes we've got people running up and down to open the bottom gates and the dregs and get them right at 17%, so we can have the perfect blend to happen. Pretty important. You think that happens accurately? Probably not. You got physical part when you're loading the cars, 2 to 3 guys that are opening lids, somebody running the controls, checking proteins. You've got your loco driver, and you're going to have anywhere from 6 to 12 hours loading these trains And sometimes that's at 7 o'clock at night when the train finally shows up after people have been dumping grain all day long already. So at that point in time, we began partnering with a company called Hitachi Vantara, and that's, again, for us, the complement of having Marubeni backing us and understanding what we're trying to do. And within Marubeni, a lot of times they'll switch employees from company to company with somebody like Hitachi, so we have people that get experience in different technologies. And so we did have an employee that came back from Hitachi, and he wanted to help us on this project. So we began that, and honestly, back in 21 when we did this, the whole concept was we're going to go to a humanless elevator. And I can tell you from my standpoint, I was one of the first guys to say that's ridiculous. Can't happen, won't happen. And we worked at it for quite a while with Hitachi. No slam to them. I could see after a while they were going, I don't think we can get to a humanless elevator. So how about we help you with your ERP and accounting systems? That's a lot easier. So I kind of put a stop to that project at that point in time and said, I don't think we're getting to where we want to get to. And that was right about the time that CHS announced their project in Herman, Minnesota, and that was coming out and getting public. And I have to say, I really applaud CHS for that effort. I hear it's close, but it's not humanless yet. But it is a giant step for what needs to happen. So we kind of scrapped through, and we had to start with a different view, and that's how do we reduce our needs? It needed to become more about, not needing to hire, not reducing, but not needing to hire more people. So what we did is we started a country elevator automation task force with Marubeni, part Marubeni employees, part Columbia Grain ops people, and really got our people on the ground across our entire footprint thinking about it. And certainly within Marubeni, you had a lot of people that wanted to get involved because it gives them a chance to stand out and do something different from what they're used to doing. But one of the things that, as we were struggling in the Hitachi project, I started to think about, and it was one thing that came across my desk one day, was that we couldn't find people to run the grain labs in North Dakota. And Hitachi was really good at building robots, and so I wanted them to start looking at, let's look at just small wins. Could Marubeni or could Hitachi create robots that could move grain from the inspection piece across the system to different machines and do that for us and reduce the number of people? So it's one of the projects that's kind of out there where I think a person can get wins is in the grain lab and how you can automate through that system. So that's one of the things we've been working on. I think when you look at, what you're trying to, I might have missed one here. Anyway, we'll go with this one. You have to start, from the beginning and look for wins and where you can do things. So when we look at inbound grain, how much robotization can we get out of it? What kind of things are out there that can happen? Remote probing, for instance. We have found systems where we could set up 3 to 5 probe systems that are all remote. We could have somebody sitting in Great Falls, Montana that can run 3 to 5 probes, remote, cameras, sensors, all those types of things. So we can do that with a lot less people, and we can do it from a place where we can hire people because it's a population center as opposed to where a lot of our elevators sit. Weighing and inspection, how remote or how robotic can we get on that? And you can find equipment now in Canada, at least in Canada I know, that is coming out that will kind of automate the whole grading system, do the work for you, and post the results and connect with your ERPs. So that kind of equipment is out there. Autonomous transportation, we think that's close. It's not here yet, but it's going to happen. But if you're in situations where you're moving grain from elevator to elevator, or even someday off the farm into your facilities, those are things that are going to work, as well as robotic vacuums for cleaning, those kind of things. We also think it's important to have standardization. So as we are looking at all these facilities that we're thinking about after we get done with our concept project, how do we keep all of our facilities in line? Because part of the problem when you talk about knowledge succession, and that is, how do we have the same systems that everybody can run and they're easy to run, even though we're spread out, because that will allow us to move people around. So that's going to revolve a lot around the PLC systems, and some of the high-tech programs for that can help us. And then incorporating into that some of the AI issues that we see can help, particularly when we're talking about protein wheats and that, when you can utilize AI to help you with grain placement and inventory when you're unloading it. We believe that they'll be, through AI learning, we'll be able to just let the systems take care of where the grain should go. And when you're loading the train, it'll help tell you where the grain should come from, so you'll have less people worrying about it. When you have today's systems that people are trying to work off of Excel spreadsheets and that, you have a lot of opportunity for error. But if we can get these systems set up between grain grading and the conveyance systems and that will kind of handle all that with the information that's inputted into it. So we believe there'll be a lot of AI power that's going to come about to help us with all this stuff. And then the cybernation part of it, which just involves the use of cameras, RFIDs, QR codes, motion, thermal, sonic, and optical sensors throughout the whole system to just reduce the number of people that are there. So as we talk about, again, these are the three areas that we are looking at as we go throughout the system. And we're doing this really with a lot of help from vendors, a lot of information from other people, and our teams as well. So, and I can only say that it's really important to incorporate a lot of these things, or a lot of these people to help you with that. Some of the things that we have that haven't all put in place, but we've certainly studied for and are ready to do in our concept project. And again, a lot of it's around automated sampling and testing, looking at systems for the inbound. We think right off the bat, those are the early wins. Robotic systems for handling and sorting grains, and that's more in our pulse plant areas, as well as the automated inventory management, utilizing barcodes and RFID tags, and that's, again, more in our pulse systems. Pretty tough to do with bulk corn. And remote monitoring and controlling of systems, where we could, when we get to lights out, we certainly need that ability for people to have dashboards at home and managers to be able to watch it to see when there's problems are out there. We also have to think about the energy management systems. It's really interesting to go across our footprint between elevators and pulse plants, and you can have things 20 miles apart and have twice as high as energy bills running the exact same amount of grain across your system. And there's another area where we think AI can help us to reduce the costs of operating some of these facilities. And certainly blockchain technology, we're utilizing it on the export side of our business, but you're going to see more of it across the system on the interior as well, to reduce the amount of paperwork that happens. But I think what's really important, and to get people more involved in it, is to think about where your wind's going to come from. Certainly starting at the scale, with your auto probing and remote probing and integrated inventory and accounting software, and a lot of that's available already, but how you can incorporate it into your ERP systems and that. Inspection services are something I think that are right there on the cusp with robotization and self-grading equipment. You'll see big strides in that in the next couple of years. You know, for us, and we look at it, I know in necessarily corn and soybeans, it's not near as important as it is for us in the wheat side of the business when we're doing a lot of protein segregation. But those AI types of programs that will help us with blending and that are going to really make a difference, and you're going to see strides in that in the next couple of years. And I'm particularly keen on it because I own a little open AI stock, so that's a good thing too. Your blending decisions in your elevator operations, and then even loading. You know, there's lid opening systems that are out there today that I think are pretty cool, that can open the rail cars, close them, tag them, and all that. But I think you also have to keep in mind, because I think they're over $2 million for those systems. And if you're going to have the people at the elevator anyway, at least the analysis I did, you might save $25,000 a year opening, closing lids automated that way. So that's probably something that's on the back burner for us, because all this still has to have some kind of economic return for us as we look at it from the leadership side of things. So a little recap on how we've gone about the process. We're conducting a proof of concept right now to verify the feasibility of a fully automated grain elevator. And as I said, we struggled a lot as a company because we were trying to do it ourselves, trying to do it with just our ops team or the Marabini staff helping us in that. And I watched us spin in circles until we started bringing in a lot of experts from the outside that had done it, knew about it. And we had to get those people to the table. We had to invest some money into that so that we could manage all that and get more information, figure out what elevators we want to target. We've got one elevator in North Dakota that we're targeting for a proof of concept. We've had engineers going through it already. We're in the process of deciding which companies to go with and start that off. And that's really where you start at and think about where you're going to get the most wins from it. And figure out all the cutting edge technology that you need. And I know we talk about gradually reducing the workforce with the ultimate goal of achieving a fully automated unmanned elevator. I think it's acceptable to get to minimal number of employees, because I don't think we're ever going to get to unmanned. And then begin integrating the robotics and the AI-driven solutions to automate everything. Kind of looking at the milestones that we're looking at today. Of course, immediately the bin selection systems are the first things in our milestones that we're working at. The unloading operations, sampling and inspection parts. We know those, we haven't incorporated them yet, but we're about to. And then binning automation is work that's going to be happening over the next year and a half. Then looking at, as I said, kind of the last things we want to look at are the loading side of things. We want to look at everything from the inbound start and where we get the biggest wins with that. And lastly will be a lot of the AI stuff that's going to happen into those systems. I think the one thing that everybody always has to understand and know is that it has to pay for itself economically, and we also have to incorporate and think about the other benefits of AI-driven solutions and the predictive things like the enhanced decision-making. Again, going back to, we don't always know what kind of labor we're going to have and turnover of labor. It seems like labor turns over faster now. People don't want to work in the same job as long as they used to want to work in the same job. So how can we get to more decision-making that's done by computers for us in these facilities? and teach those computers to blend grain properly, to put grain away properly. And you're going to get through a lot of that with the automated decision-making softwares that are out there and available to be used. We also think you're going to get better grain quality and consistency through this. Over the years, loading 14 Pro spring trains, I've had one or two managers that could load them really consistently to 14 Pro, 14.1, almost every single car. But we've got 14 of these facilities, and I know that we're not going to get it to where they can do it with humans doing it that consistently. But I do believe with the help of AI and automation that we can get to it consistently. We have to think about the cost savings involved, as I said, and then also the resource management that we have, and can we have a continuous operation in a least cost fashion. So. Some of the things, these are just kind of more repeats of what we've seen for equipment that are out there. Again, incorporating them into the facilities with starting at the dump pits, weighing and inspection, and just thinking about it through the flow of the system. With automated probing, we also know that there's automated probing that will do it with sensors without any people. Again, it's just about cost and will it pay for itself, and I think it will in time. So going back to where we were pre-automation and kind of what we think our future operation looks like, could you have farmer recognition, and will we have farmer recognition that face screens will tell you who it is, who's hauling the grain, what account number to use, those kind of things. Self-probing, sensor controls, grading systems and inspection systems that manage themselves within the facility, can talk to the ERPs for accounting purposes, can talk to the elevator for binning purposes, and letting AI decide where the grain is going to go, and utilizing those algorithms that are out there for it. Autonomous locomotives, and there certainly are places today that already use remote control locomotives. We found it difficult in BNSF situations on circle tracks to go to automated remote control systems. We have to have people sitting in there per the BNSF, and even I think there's been some people that have tried the remote control systems with them, but they're really difficult to set up, and when you've only got 10 hours to load, sometimes it's not worthwhile to do that. And in a lot of our straight track scenarios where we might be moving cars 4, 5, 6 times as we're trying to load them, it's a little bit difficult. But in time, I think it'll become more acceptable to start looking at remote control scenarios for the locomotives and loading it in that. This is just a little bit kind of what we look at as agricultural digital transformation, and I do believe it's coming. So it's more or less a recap of most of the items that I've talked about today. The bottom part talks about, what are the results that can come out of all these types of projects that we're trying to do. A lot of it comes down to having working conditions that employees find to be more acceptable, so it finds it easier to find the kind of talent that we need to run these facilities, adds to your profitability, will give you different ways of thinking about how you are buying grain and how you can bid for grain, which might make you more competitive within your region. So these are all things that we think about when we talk about return on the facilities, and are they worthwhile projects to do? And the producer should find benefit out of what we're doing as well. Kind of in a bigger system, as we talk about just AI, market integration, technology, and this stuff isn't, a lot of this stuff goes on anyway, and I've seen several companies in the last 10 years that have tried to put together kind of a digital marketplace where people or companies have all the information from farmers through the system, from the inbound customer to the outbound customer, and it's all about data. And data is going to probably bring us better returns, but these are the things that we will think about going forward, from the elevator to the farm to the outer customer, and how you can incorporate all the market intelligence, forward contracting, incorporate crop insurance into it all, but a lot of it's going to be digital going forward. So where we think things will go towards the next 10 years in the grain industry, advanced sensor technology, you're going to see a lot more of that within facilities. And the other hard part that I forget to mention is, I don't know how many are here from Montana or North Dakota, but I'll bet every one of you would tell me we don't need any more grain elevators across North Dakota and Montana. We have enough. There's probably too many. So when you think about building a new one out there, I think that's going to be economically a really tough proposition. So we have to think about how do we repurpose a lot of the facilities that we have today. But advanced sensor technology, you're going to see a lot of improvement in that, and we'll be incorporating those into our facilities. Data analytics and artificial intelligence. I continue to tell our people that data is going to make winners out of grain companies, and those that incorporate data and AI intelligence into their facilities will be the ones that will come out ahead. Robotics and autonomous vehicles. I do believe 5 to 7 years we'll start seeing grain transfers that happen with autonomous vehicles. We already have the blockchain and supply chain transparency that's out there. So far it's been primarily in the export side of the world, but I think you'll see it incorporated more into the interior and the domestic business. And then just kind of the remote monitoring and controls. I know coming out of COVID, one of the bigger things, particularly from my traders, was we want to work at home, which we didn't go home at all during COVID, because my grain elevator guys, you guys were out there running the facilities. I certainly weren't going to have my trade staff and accounting staff at home either. They all needed to come to the office as well, and I continue that through our system. But as we go forward and labor gets tighter, there's certainly going to be times when we'll need more monitoring of the facilities through remote monitoring and remote controls. So that'll be out there. But that's what I've got to say today, Jess, and appreciate you asking me to be here.
Well, Jeff, thanks for an excellent presentation. This was very, very helpful information. Thanks for taking the time. You're obviously a very busy man with your position, and for being here. And it's very interesting because many of the topics you discussed are several of the issues that we're going to be talking about later today here, right? Energy efficiency, grain grading technology, all of these topics, and NGFA, we're very involved on the grain grading technology side too, and I think obviously that was a topic you said is a very important issue moving forward. So a couple questions for you here just as a follow-up, and I think, what is your number one challenge in running the elevator, and what is the solution?
The number one challenge is the labor, at least in our footprint. Both from the number of people, also to the amount of experience that's out there. And through that, this really automation, I think, is the best and quickest way that we will solve the labor issue that we have across our footprint. Maybe some consolidation, particularly, as I said, we've got about 20 single-car truck loading facilities, and that's probably going to need to be reduced.
I thought it was also very interesting when you were talking too about there's a lot of grain elevators out there, and that obviously one of the things we're going to be talking about too is how do you modernize an old facility, And so I think that's a very interesting topic too. And I don't know how many of your facilities, right, that you're modernizing, you're updating with automation, how many of them are existing versus how many of them are new facilities that you're building from scratch?
Well, as we look at our shuttle system with 14 of them, there's probably, we did a lot of repurposing when we went through the shuttle system. And we've either acquired or built brand new, maybe 4. So a lot of our facilities have had space added on, different conveyance, things like that. So there's a lot of work to be done when it comes to how you're going to automate all that. It was the same with our pea and lentil plants. The Plentywood plant was the last one that we built new, came online in 2020, Scott? 2019. That one, was built and can be easily automated. We've redone Ross, North Dakota. We can get to where we can go lights out on that facility. But the rest of them are going to need a lot of work. They need finished product space, thinking about how you can let the computers do it. And most of the grain terminals, I think we started on our proof of concept facility. I think we took what we think will be the hardest one to do, and we'll do that one, and that way we can work at the other ones in an easier fashion.
Great. So if you're working for a company facility with limited resources, what is the biggest bang for the buck that you can get regarding automation improvement?
I think the biggest bang that we're going to get is in the inbound side of the grain. So probing, inspecting, and getting in before the truck gets to the facility. That way you can purpose your people at the grain facility as opposed to putting positions that can be done by automation already. So start where you can get a win and reduce the amount of people that you need to hire for those positions. So,
great. Before we conclude here, are there any questions from the audience for Jeff? I think there's one.
Have you looked at the license plates recognition on trucks? Have you looked at the license plate recognition at the inbound scales?
it would be part of the RFID readers. I mean, today we're just using the RFID cards and thinking about that. But I'll ask our ops about it. That could be a good way to do it.
Okay. Any other? Wait for the microphone so we can hear you, John.
There you go. Yeah, Jeff, given your remote location support for the automation and systems, are you trying to develop some of that internally, or are you relying on third party for that, or?
Well, we started it internally, and we spun our wheels a lot. I think it's a big collaboration project is what it is. You really have to have the outside vendors and put all that together and then start memorializing it internally from there. And that's a big part of why I think you try to keep it really synonymous across your whole systems. Have all the facilities the same, so we have the same operations and our operations team thinking the same way with how you do it. But there's so much. Everything is moving so fast in those fields today. You need a lot of outside influence and different eyes on it, different ideas coming from people, particularly when you have more repurposed facilities that you have to. It's not all the same. So, you know, what's important, and you've seen some of it through, some of the infrastructure bills with the government that's putting about better connectivity out in the country. You know, one of the things we fought is having connectivity in our pulse plants, but you have to have that ability to get into your systems, to get into your PLCs from the outside, or it's all useless. You might as well be there. And I know we've still got one or two facilities that don't have connectivity, don't even have Wi-Fi in our facilities, and so we've got to get that coming in. But the government's here for us. So,
Well, we'll save that. We'll save that discussion for another time, Jeff. Thank you. Well, thank you. I'm sorry. I think we have one more question, and then we'll have to wrap it up.
The question I have is concerning more on the maintenance side of issues. I mean, if you have a breakdown or whatever, how do you address that? Do you make redundant systems to keep the thing going? I mean, it seems like to me, if you have somebody delivering corn in the middle of the season, a drag breaks down or a belt breaks or something like that, how do you handle a situation like that with automation?
that's where they have systems set up for warnings, right, and shutting down the systems. And then as we look at it from the lights out standpoint, we have to have that ability for the system to call somebody, put out notifications, let them know. That's it. It's a big part of why I say we're not going to get to humanless. Okay, you're going to have somebody on site most all the time. We hope and we think the lights out system will work, but it also might be about having one person there instead of 3 people there, type of scenario.
Well, once again, let's thank Jeff for taking his time for a great presentation.
Thanks, Jess.